And cyber incidents have been identified as the top peril for companies globally. In the Alliance Risk Barometer, which identifies the major business risks for 2020, cyber challenges for the first time topped the chart of the risks businesses globally are likely to face this year. However, in Africa and the Middle East, business interruption has been identified as the major risk for corporates this year. Well, joining me now to talk more about this Risk Barometer report is the Group Head Special Risks at Alliance Global Corporates and Specialty, Wale Adeneye. Thank you, Mr. Adeneye, for coming on the show. All right, what is this report all about? What does it seek to achieve? What is the essence of this Risk Barometer report?
Alliance Risk Barometer 20 is a publication of Alliance Global Corporate and Specialty. This is an annual survey which is always conducted in over 100 countries all over the world, and with responses from over 2,700 experts cutting across CEOs, risk managers, insurance professionals, as well as brokers. And the essence of this Alliance Risk Barometer 2020 report is to highlight the global business risks that business entities face all over the world. And also to look at the risk at the global level, at the regional level, and at the local level, if there could be a link of risk being faced by business entities all over the world.
So what kind of methodology do you use, to gather this data?
A questionnaire is always used in gathering the data. So all over the world, questionnaires are administered for the countries that we've recognized that they are supposed to take part of the survey, and as well as the CEOs, the risk managers, the insurance professionals that have been identified to be part of the survey. Questionnaires are administered online, and results are collated online and analyzed online as well.
All right, now, from the history of your Risk Barometer reports, 7 years ago, cyber risk ranked only 15th with just 6% of responses. Yeah. Now it's top on the list. What has changed the narrative?
Recently, we do all know that the development in the technology world has moved from the mainframe computer into artificial intelligence. We now talk of data mining, we talk of the big data, we talk of every entity is now automating their processes. By and large, all companies has reduced manual processes, and they all leverages on the use of technology in delivering their businesses. Processes are automated right from input to output. So as much as companies, corporate entities relied on technology, data breaches, IT failure, cyber attack, we ordinarily move from the position it was 15 years ago at 15th position to number 1. So it's now a global incident where we record cyber attack and cyber incidents. WikiLeaks is still fresh in the memory. Ransomware that just happened in South Africa is still fresh in the memory. Even locally in Nigeria, the Central Bank of Nigeria recently issued a new regulation which mandates banks in Nigeria to take a cyber liability insurance policy. And it's obvious that banks in Nigeria today, if you look at their payment platform, everything else depends on technology. In view of this, cyber attack is real, cyber crime is real, and it's on the increase. So for this development, for this emerging risk, cyber incidents now move from the 15th position to number 1 position in the 2020 reports.
Now, are there some kind of risk mitigations that Alliance probably is preferring here?
Yes. Alliance Group, as a leading insurer worldwide, having realized that we are there to, for our customers, we realize that there will be economic losses when there are cyber incidents. They will lose money, one. When there is a data breach, there could be penalties. When there's a data breach, there could be litigations. Therefore, we have in place an insurance product called cyber liability insurance product to deal with this. So when a customer or one of our insurers suffer this risk, we will step in to indemnify the customer and put the customer to the position he or she was before the loss occurred. There's no doubt that there will be an economic loss, that we have economic loss when there is a cyber attack. In fact, when there is a cyber attack or there is a cyber crime, money will be lost. So for these purposes, we put in place an insurance product to deal with the losses that could have emanated from these losses.
Okay. Now, business interruption, of course, for this number of years has always been at the top of the list of global risks to businesses. Now, this year it has dropped to number two. So what major factors were identified there? What are the trends when you talk about business interruption?
Interestingly, traditionally, business interruption happens when a business is unable to continue operation or production as a result of an event, which could have been as a result of a fire incident, if there is fire damage in a factory or in an office, if there is a flood. For that period of interruption, there will be economic losses because the business can't earn economic income. For those losses, insurance will actually indemnify the insured. But the risk has moved from the traditional flood, the traditional fire incident, the traditional machinery breakdown. When there's a production, the machinery breakdown, because of the impact of, again, the cyber incident, digitalization. So when there is a cyber attack, most likely the company won't be able to operate at that period. Most likely production will be cut short. So when the production is cut short as a result of a new emerging risk now, which is as a result of cyber or civil unrest or political violence, definitely insurance will now step in order to indemnify the insured for that period. Interestingly, the development of cyber in business interruption is a new risk, because this was not in our focus then. But out of the survey and from the respondents, we realized that even cyber attack has gone beyond just ordinary cyber crime. When there is a cyber attack, there could be a breakdown in IT processes, in technology processes, in the automation processes. So when there is that breakdown, when there is that interruption, definitely business interruption has kicked in. And such losses will also be borne by an insurance company. And as a leading insurance company in the world, we have a policy as well to take care of these losses.
Now, another new entrant in your risk barometer is macroeconomic development. You talked about monetary policies, austerity programs, commodity price increase, deflation, inflation. What are your findings? Even though looking at the global business risks, their macroeconomic development appears to be number 10, right? Now, but what are your findings around these macroeconomic developments?
Okay, I would like to situate the answer to that within Nigeria as an entity.
Of course, that appears number one for Nigeria. When you talk about businesses, and that's macroeconomic development.
Yeah.
We can see that on the slide. That's the first business risk, for corporates this year.
For Nigeria, it's quite interesting, and we don't need to go far away before we find answers to that. The recent ban of importation by land is a good example, and it has resulted in commodity price increase in Nigeria, especially when it comes to the sales of rice, which is what everybody is saying. And when there is a commodity price increase, no doubt there will be inflation. Purchasing power will reduce, and it will have an impact on the economy. And for that reason, it has actually impacted on the Nigerian economy. So for companies that source for their raw material from the neighboring countries, that normally does that through the land border can't do that through the land border now. So they have to do it through the ports, which means the cost of production will have increased without necessarily increasing productivity. So it's an emerging risk, and it's staring us in the face.
And still bringing it down, to Nigeria. Well, it's not just Nigeria that has that as well.
Oh, definitely.
Ghana also has macroeconomic development as a top risk there. Now, should businesses in these countries, Nigeria, neighboring country Ghana, be worried?
Interestingly, one of the discovery from this report is that emerging risk are not localized, which means it's not a Nigerian risk alone. So risk now cut across different countries, and they can see the same risk all over the world. So what that tells us, because we are all operating in a global economy, then we need to be doing peer review and understand that whatever risk happens in Nigeria will happen everywhere, and what are the mitigations for all these risks.
Yeah, so you tell me, what are the mitigations for all this risk? What are the governments? I mean, for you that gather this data, how do you really, bring in the policymakers into this to look at some of these risks that you keep coming up with, perhaps for them to prefer a solution to some of these problems?
So for this report is made public, and for some risk, it can be resolved through insurance policies. But for such risk, when it happens, when we are able to discover those reports, we share this report with the government authorities. So the CBN will have a copy of the report, the Ministry of Finance will have a copy of the report, the Monetary Policy Council will have a committee, will have a policy, so that when they are implementing, or when they're having their Monetary Policy Committee meeting, they can also use the report as an input.
Now, has there been any cases where these reports you churn out have been used as an input to the monetary policy decisions that we've heard, several?
Maybe not in Nigeria, but I'm sure that it has happened in South Africa when the issue of a cyber incident happened in South Africa, and the report was used, and it became a law.
And why not in Nigeria? I mean, you've identified some of these issues, which of course is staring us to the face.
Yeah.
How much engagement have you had with the government, the fiscal authority, the monetary authority?
Do know that Alliance is still there in Nigeria. We came in 2018. So this report is coming in for the first time. This is 2019 report, which is coming in 2020. And we do agree very well within our entity that we are going to engage government more on this report, and so that it will assist government in decision making. I must be honest with you, cyber attack happens every 1 hour in this country. We can't do away without improvement in our technology, improvement in our automation. We are not isolated from what is going on in the world. So it is our own priority now to sit down with the government and share this report with them, and collaborate with the government in the implementation of these reports. Okay.
Now, still looking at the report for risks for Nigeria. Now, I have political risks, of course, ranking 9th, while we have theft, fraud, and corruption ranking 2nd. Business interruption came 3rd. So what informed this thinking, by your respondents?
For Nigeria, political violence, civil unrest is not new to our history. Let me take you back to 2007.
So ordinarily, one would have thought that political risk would have come up the ladder there.
For the respondents, because they cut across diverse segments and sectors, they all have had their reason for the responses they've given to us. So for political violence, 2011, we recall what happened post-election, post-presidential election. In 2015, we thank God there was no violence. But again, we can't extricate what happened when the attack on Nigeria in South Africa and the retaliation in Nigeria in December still fresh in mind. So political violence is a risk in Nigeria. Businesses were attacked. Some companies that had South African origin shut down. They couldn't make production. They couldn't sell within that period. So there were economic losses. And these are risks that, again, these are risks that, yes, we realized that it's part of the Nigerian economy over time. But what has happened? How come theft, fraud, and corruption now ranks as number 2? I must be honest with you. In this Alliance Risk Barometer report of 2020, it has been estimated that by year 2030, 37% of Nigeria's GDP will be lost to corruption. Just last week, Transparency International issued their new report, and they said Nigeria slipped from 144 to 146 out of 180 countries that were ranked. That means corruption, it's a problem and it's endemic to the Nigerian country. And if we don't curtail corruption, corruption is going to destabilize our economy.
Well, let's hope it doesn't happen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Wale Adene is a group head, special risks at Alliance Global Corporates and Specialty.